What is up, everybody? Tony here, and today is a day I've been waiting for close to 20 years. I am going to be taking a deep dive into the 20th Dragon Ball movie, Dragon Ball Super Broly, which I was finally able to watch on the big screen in all of its glory. 3 times. Yes, I'm a madman. Now, you might be thinking, Tony, they only just announced this movie in December of 2017. How have you been waiting for this movie for 20 years? Well, I'm going to get into that and much more as we take a look at everything this movie had to offer, what it did well, what it did not so well, and at the end, we'll be taking a look at some of the potential directions the Dragon Ball franchise could go coming out of this game-changing movie. But the main bulk of the video will be my complete and honest impressions of the film, so there are going to be some spoilers. If you have not watched the movie, I recommend doing that before watching this video. That said, while the plot of the movie is important, it was the art and animation that was really the star of the show, and that's where we're going to start here today. Dragon Ball Super Broly is, above all else, a visual spectacle. No matter how much I give my detailed account of the art and animation of the film here in this video, it will not do it justice. And watching a crappy cam rip of the movie isn't really doing it justice either. You really need to watch this thing in full HD quality to truly appreciate what the artists have done here. DBS Broly represents a sort of refresh of the Dragon Ball franchise, and the main way that was done is through the change in art style. To truly appreciate what is happening here with this movie, we need to create a bit of context. Since 1992, with the original Broly movie, the lead character designer for the Dragon Ball movies and anime was Tadayoshi Yamamuro. He masterfully replicated Toriyama's later, harder edge style, seen mainly in the Buu saga of the manga, and translated it into the animated medium. Remember movie 9, movie 12? All that badass art from the 90s that you remember was probably drawn by Yamamuro. However, as time went on, something changed. I don't know what exactly, but it was something. Kind of like a George Lucas effect. As the years went on, Yamamuro's art style changed and became strange, and more shiny, and more bad. Indeed, as time went on, Yamamuro got further and further away from Toriyama's style and kinda created a new style all of his own. Now personally, the excitement surrounding Battle of Gods and the resurgence of the entire Dragon Ball franchise was enough to distract me from this issue of Yamamuro's art. It really wasn't until Dragon Ball Super began airing and we were getting new Dragon Ball content every single week that the vocal minority speaking out against Yamamuro's style became louder and louder. And it was at that point that I started to notice, yeah, why did Dragon Ball look so much better 20 years ago? Despite Yamamuro's position as main character designer, certain animation supervisors working on Dragon Ball Super began to, for lack of a better term, ignore Yamamuro's character design sheets. And it showed, because for whatever reason, and at the time I didn't fully understand why, there were these scenes that just looked way better than everything else. Enter Naotoshi Shida, a series veteran who looked to retain that beloved 90s Dragon Ball art style, unlike Yamamuro. Enter newcomer Yuya Takahashi, who more than anyone else injected that 90s style into his art. More and more as the series went on, we were beginning to see that 90s style return thanks to these wonderful artists and animators. And after a disastrous start to Dragon Ball Super, by the end of the Tournament of Power, many agreed that some of those episodes and scenes were the best Dragon Ball animation has ever looked, myself included. So there was a lot of optimism coming out of the end of Super that going forward, Yamamuro may have a reduced role, and the designs for the characters and overall art style would finally get that much needed overhaul. And then in 2018, our prayers were answered. Naohiro Shintani, known for his work on One Piece, took over as lead animation director and character designer for Dragon Ball Super Broly, and for the first time in 26 years, Yamamuro was out. Goku had changed from the shiny, plastic, slanted dude on the left to the loose, confident, early DBZ style of Shintani's on the right. There was a ton of excitement in the air for Dragon Ball fans. But then, Toei threw the fanbase another curveball with the first official trailer for Dragon Ball Super Broly at Comic-Con 2018. Despite fans getting their first look at the softer Goku designed by Shintani, the trailer consisted primarily of fan favorite Yuya Takahashi's art style, which quite frankly was pretty damn different from Shintani's. It was at this point that my personal hype for the movie went into overdrive, and it was at that point that I realized the impossible might become possible. The Yamamuro movies from the 90s, the best Dragon Ball has ever looked in my mind. Would they finally be topped by this new movie? And now that I've seen it, I can say with confidence that the answer is yes. Dragon Ball Super Broly is bar none the best Dragon Ball has ever looked. Ever! It stands alongside the best looking movies and the best looking episodes of the show and presents Dragon Ball as it should be presented, with the respect a billion-dollar beloved franchise like this deserves. This is what I've always wanted. It's what I dreamed about back when I was complaining about stuff like this, or this, or this. Ugh. DBS Broly's entire presentation is unique because it actually displays the work of many talented artists who each have a different style, and all of them manage to shine. Now, I've heard some people kinda uneasy about just how wildly the art styles change, and that sometimes they felt they were clashing from one scene to the next. But honestly, I loved it. I loved 10 minutes of hard-edged Broly versus Vegeta, clearly supervised by Takahashi, only to be broken up by a warming-up Goku drawn by Ryo Onishi, who far more strictly adheres to the Shintani character sheets. I'll get into more detail when we reach that section of the movie, but I really felt the changes in the art style didn't clash, but rather enhanced the entire experience. Now, there are a ton of artists who contributed to this film, but honestly, I'm not an animation expert, so I'll leave that to the pros, and I'll mostly be giving my thoughts on Takahashi, Onishi, and Shida's sections in this video. Anyways, the way DBS Broly looks is the look of the future for the Dragon Ball franchise, and I can only pray this look continues into the next Dragon Ball anime. But we're going to talk more about what's next in a little bit. Let's start at the beginning of the movie itself. The movie is structured into 3 distinct sections. We have the flashback sequence for the first 25 minutes or so, followed by 25 minutes of present time action, which sets up the final 45 minutes of the film, a non-stop fight between Goku, Vegeta, and Broly. And when I say non-stop, I mean non-stop. It's like a 45-minute roller coaster ride watching this fight take place, and there's legitimately nothing like it in the history of Dragon Ball. But before we get to the fight, let's go in order from the beginning. The flashback sequence comes first, and plot-wise, it is basically the Dragon Ball minus Bardock story, with a bit of Broly's backstory from Movie 8 mixed in there as well. I've been vocal in the past about my disdain for the Dragon Ball minus story and my love for the Bardock special, so I won't hit that point too hard in this video. But unfortunately, the movie did not really change my feelings when it comes to the story. Turning Goku's backstory, which was already close enough to Superman's backstory, to literally Superman's backstory is pretty lame in my opinion. I liked that Bardock was a badass, degenerate Saiyan asshole who barely even cared about his own kid. That's an interesting angle and makes what Goku does in the future even more powerful. For the longest time in Dragon Ball canon, there were no good Saiyans. They were all assholes as far as we knew. They were basically pirates that just went around murdering and killing for profits. Goku being the only good-hearted Saiyan and becoming a Super Saiyan as a result, whatever. I know I'm not convincing anyone here, and it's not that I hate Minus, I just vastly prefer the Bardock special. Here in DBS Broly, Bardock is relegated to the role of a background player in this realization of Goku's origin story. The focus here clearly is establishing Goku, Vegeta, and Broly as basically the three chosen ones of the Saiyan race. All three are sent in vastly different directions following the destruction of Planet Vegeta, and for the first time, they all come together again in the current day in this movie. So I like how all that ties in together, but I do still kind of feel this section of the movie dragged a little bit. It was a lot of exposition that even as a hardcore Dragon Ball fan myself, who was following every little detail, the pacing could have been tightened up a little bit during this part of the movie. Then we have the destruction of Planet Vegeta. I thought the execution of this very crucial scene was kinda poor, especially considering how badass some of the destruction or big-time crucial moments looked later in the film. I think a little more care should have been taken here to make the destruction look completely terrifying and present Frieza as this really evil bastard. This is probably where the Bardock special stands out for me the most, as Ryusei Nakao's performance as Frieza in that scene is, to this day, my favorite performance of his in the entire series, and it's the Frieza character in a nutshell. He's a complete psychopath who gets off on violence and death. There is none of that here, and that was super disappointing to me. He doesn't even do his signature laugh. I'm sure they could have thought of a new take for presenting the destruction of Planet Vegeta at the hands of Frieza, and it could have been so awesome. Instead, it comes off as flat and uninspired, and that's such a missed opportunity, I think. Let me know in the comments below if you like this animated version of Goku's origin story, or if you still prefer the craziness of the original Bardock special with all of its time travel, solid state scouter-based madness. From what I've seen so far, the community's feelings are pretty split on this, especially after the movie adapted Dragon Ball Minus into animated form, because suddenly I'm seeing a lot more positivity towards that interpretation of the story. So let me know. The banishment of Baby Broly, who has a crazy high battle power, is lifted directly from movie 8. And I like that that was kept here because it was always an interesting premise for a Saiyan character. What Toriyama decided to do away with was the Baby Goku crying in a pod beside Baby Broly that resulted in Broly's murderous behavior. That was kinda hilarious, but also kinda dumb. I very much prefer this version of Broly's backstory, with him being banished to the faraway planet Vampa with especially harsh conditions. And I'm going to get more into why this works so well, and harkens back to a story Dragon Ball has done in the past in the next section. As we transition over to the modern day, we get a fun little scene featuring a young Nappa and child versions of Raditz and Vegeta. There's some awesome comedy here that made me laugh out loud, where Raditz shrugs off Goku and the planet Earth like it's something he'll never have to worry about as long as he lives. Then some hero managed to throw a Tarble reference into the script, a character who has been unseen since that Yo Son Goku and his friends return special from over 10 years ago. Oh my god, that was over 10 years ago. I am so old. Vegeta literally echoes the feelings of the writing staff by saying, I guess I did have a brother. Who cares? It was also at this point that I realized Tarble had more of a role in this movie than Son Gohan, who is not even mentioned, let alone seen. This movie is a tough one for Gohan fans, that is for sure. But again, I think it would be hard to incorporate him into this movie in any meaningful way, given the direction they went by focusing so heavily on the three remaining full-blooded Saiyans. At this point, we head to Earth, and we fast forward about 30 years to the present day. A new rendition of Head Shala plays alongside some very quick little looks at all of Goku's various battles across the years. I absolutely love this, and it kind of makes me sad that Head Shala is the only music from the original Dragon Ball Z series that has made the jump to the new era. We need remixes of those Kikuchi melodies, or at least give me We Gotta Power. Please make it happen. Somehow. Please. We now reach section 2 of the movie, which bridges that flashback sequence to the big fight between our three main characters. Things slow down here, there's not a ton of action, so it's in this section that we really get to develop the characters themselves. Goku and Vegeta are pretty self-explanatory at this point and don't really do anything out of the ordinary. The featured characters that I think stood out the most were Broly and Frieza. Ultimately, I think it was the right decision to only focus on a few characters and really flesh them out. If they tried to shoehorn Gohan and Krillin and 18 and Master Roshi into the film, I don't know how well that would have come off. However, I will have an issue if this just becomes the Goku, Vegeta, and Broly show going forward. Those secondary characters should have important moments too, especially Gohan, who I think has a ton of potential. See what I did there? See what I did there? Hey. Let's begin with Frieza, who I think they absolutely nailed once that flashback ended. In an incredible moment transitioning from Bulma explaining her wish to look 5 years younger, we learned that Frieza wishes to be 5 centimeters taller. Wanting to gather the Dragon Balls just for a dumbass wish like that is pure Toriyama. I laughed out loud at the little frog dude straight up telling him, sire, your second form is really tall. Just transform into that if you want to be tall and jacked. And then Frieza's like,
but I don't want to be a pirate!
Awesome. Awesome. I've seen some complaints about the assassination of the Frieza character with this movie, making him too goofy considering his history. But I do think they still did a decent job making sure he didn't become a straight-up comedy character, even though a lot of moments he's involved in come off as comedic. I do think this is the evolution of Frieza's character, and it's the path he's heading down. He's going to be more goofy, more comedic, and more friendly in general to Goku and Vegeta. Sooner or later, I do think he will be in the Piccolo role. I hereby predict we will see Frieza playing with Baby Pan when Dragon Ball Super comes back. The old Frieza absolutely rears his face though in one of the most dark and comedic moments I can remember in all of Dragon Ball. Frieza flashes back to the unforgettable moment of him killing Krillin, leading Goku to go Super Saiyan for the first time. He has managed to reverse engineer that moment and proceeds to murder Paragus in cold blood. He then turns to Broly and yells at him to look at what just happened and force a Super Saiyan transformation out of Broly as a result. It was funny, but it was also really evil and totally in line with the traditional Frieza character. I actually thought this made Frieza seem more hateable than when he blew up an entire planet full of innocent people, which again I think was just a failure on the film's part to convey that moment with a little extra oomph. Soon after learning of Frieza's new motivation, we meet Chilai and Limo, 2 new members of the Frieza Force traveling across the universe to find new recruits. And boy do they hit the jackpot. They stumble upon Vampa, meeting a near-death Paragus and adult Broly, who absolutely murders a giant monster that tries to kill them. Broly's power is so maximum that the scouters can't even measure it. The new official canon Toriyama-sanctioned Broly is a clear improvement over the original. While I still have some love for that original design of the character, there is no debate that Broly is a lot more empathetic and developed in this movie versus Goku cried as a baby near him and that pisses him off. Soon after meeting him on Vampa, his relationship begins with Chilai. The young lady is shocked that this weird hillbilly who has no concept of civilization can't even recognize a chocolate bar. Later in the film, he can't identify water. She's baffled at first, but pretty much immediately takes a liking to him and tries to incorporate him into normal society. Broly keeps a special memento to remind him of a close friend who has now left him. Does this remind you of any other relationship in Dragon Ball? Yeah, I don't think this is a coincidence. Toriyama is completely creating a parallel with the Goku and Bulma relationship from the very first chapter of Dragon Ball here with Broly and Chilai. And I think that's really cool. That obviously worked so well with Goku and Bulma that it spawned a billion-dollar franchise, so I'm not surprised at all to see so many people commenting about how Toriyama made me care about Broly. Broly wears a collar similar to the one from movie 8 that restrains him if he gets out of hand. This time though, it's Cheelai who steals and destroys the remote, essentially setting Broly free and solidifying their friendship. I thought this whole plot point was a little odd because in the original movie 8 version, Broly was presented as a psychopath mass murderer who needed to be controlled by the neck collar, and once that was gone, he lost his mind. Here, Broly seems to be pretty chill unless provoked, and losing the neck collar literally made no difference. I guess the idea behind this was to make us really hate Paragus. Like, why is this dude putting a damn collar on his fairly normal and calm son? However, I do think one of the places this film falls short overall is with Paragus. We are meant to feel hatred towards him, and Cheelai emphasizes this a lot throughout the movie, constantly repeating that Broly's a good person who doesn't want to fight, and his father is evil and made him like this. But we don't really see that. Most of Paragus' role in the movie is just him concerned about his son's well-being, and traveling to a faraway planet to save and protect him. Paragus shocks Broly because he's about to choke a dude out on Frieza's ship for harassing Cheelai. I mean, that was kinda reasonable on the part of Paragus. This dude was turned up and pushed Limo, and Broly responds by trying to murder him. Like, yeah, you're gonna get tased for that, bro. I think they could have done a much better job showing a more sadistic side of Paragus. Outside of a very quick scene of Paragus shooting Ba's ear off, the giant monster friend of Broly, he doesn't do much to make you hate him. I think 1 or 2 scenes of him treating Broly a bit worse would have done wonders. They could have pushed harder on the angle that Broly is simply a tool Paragus is using to get his revenge on King Vegeta. Really show that he's forcing Broly to fight or train against his will. I just didn't get the vibe while watching that Paragus was this absolutely despicable person despite Cheelai's constant reminders throughout the entire movie. Maybe they could have shown a scene with Paragus and Broly alone in a room where Cheelai is spying on them and witnesses Paragus activating the collar and shocking the hell out of Broly for pretty much no reason. That would have made him look like a real asshole, and I think a lot more hateable. Anyways, we have finally reached the big fight. If I had to use one word to describe the fight in DBS Broly, it would be satisfying. The punches hit hard. It reminded me in that sense a lot of the 17 versus Piccolo fight that has always been a fan favorite, except turned up to 100. The constant screaming and yelling is just so anime, and that makes the fight way better. I think the Super Saiyan 3 Goku transformation scene may have finally been topped for longest uninterrupted screaming in Dragon Ball history. The tone of the entire movie changes when Broly comes off that ship, and the art style changes to that undeniable edgy 90s feel of Yuya Takahashi. Now, I want to say again that I'm not an expert on animation and who drew what exactly, so if I accidentally mislabel someone's work here, I apologize in advance. My eye definitely isn't as good as some of the real experts on this topic. If you want a legit breakdown of basically every scene in the movie and who exactly worked on what, I recommend checking out AJ's awesome review of DBS Broly's animation over on his channel. But with Takahashi taking over as animation supervisor at this point, the movie basically screams at you as if to say, okay, business is about to pick up. And boy, does it ever pick up. Broly flies at Vegeta, a shot we've seen all over the trailers, and the fight begins. And this, kids, this fight right here is why I said at the beginning of the video that I had been waiting 20 years for this moment. Movie 12 was finally topped. This is the most crisp, the most beautiful Dragon Ball animation I have ever seen. My jaw was literally dropped seeing it in action on the big screen, and all 3 times I watched the film, it was like a 45-minute roller coaster ride that never let up. The fight is incredibly fast-paced, as you'd expect. Every time you start to get even remotely bored, something crazy happens. A transformation takes place. A giant hard-hitting technique is performed. Broly's ruthless fighting style from movie 8 is totally retained here, and we see him smashing his opponents through the ice time after time. And it's pretty great every time. Vegeta quickly goes Super Saiyan to keep up with the beast, but even that's not enough, and he's quickly forced to unveil his Super Saiyan God form. Wait, weren't you supposed to perform a ritual with 5 pure-hearted Saiyans to get that form? Who cares, just buy the toy. Vegeta knocks him around a bit, but Broly pretty much takes it, all in his base form. What a monster. But as I say that, it's at this point that he literally becomes a monster. Kinda. Broly emerges from the water now with golden eyes. Paragus tells us some very key information about what's going on here. It seems that Broly has managed to find a way to wield the power of the Ozaru in his human form, without any of the Ozaru's disadvantages. Well, as soon as he said that, I know exactly what image popped into my head, but I'll get into more details on that one later. Let's just say that line was not in there for no reason. The Ozaru in human form Broly smacks around a helpless Super Saiyan God Vegeta, and it's at this point that Goku calls out and challenges Broly. We then have a dramatic change in art style from the Yuya Takahashi 90 style to Ryo Onishi. Now, unlike Takahashi, Onishi is extremely respectful to Shintani's character design sheets, so there is a pretty stark contrast between how the characters look from one scene to the next. But in execution, I thought it was fantastic. Seeing one fight end, then a cut to the new challenger as he warms up in a completely different art style, I can't even really put it in words, but it just works. It feels big, it feels like something crazy is about to happen, and the build-up is just perfect. This is the original teaser trailer scene where Goku's kinda hopping around and loosening up, and this is so appropriate because the art style is totally bouncy and loosens up from Takahashi's section. The fight itself here between Goku and Broly follows a similar formula as the Vegeta fight. The pace is insanely fast, and before you get a chance to say, okay, this is getting a bit repetitive, bam, we get a new transformation. My favorite part of this fight has to be Goku going Super Saiyan God. Onishi's style works really well with this form. It harkens back to Toriyama's original design of the form and gives it this kind of pure quality. His fight style fits that description as well, and the first thing this Super Saiyan God Goku does is basically parry one of Broly's giant strikes. He plays a defensive game and uses this really cool new technique that freezes Broly in place. Of course, that doesn't really hold him for long, and the battle continues. It's at this point that Onishi's section ends, and we return to the Takahashi style as Super Saiyan God Goku and Broly continue the fight. Broly just manhandles Goku at this point, smashing him on the ground repeatedly, and then just grinding his face through the ice, and it is great. Soon after taking that absolute pounding, Goku decides it's time to even this thing up and transforms into Super Saiyan Blue, and my god, this transformation looked incredible, especially on the big screen. They just went all out making Blue feel like a super big deal, and they totally succeeded. Unfortunately, right after that godly transformation scene, we transition right into a CG fight. And it sucks. I'm sorry, but it sucks. You can't give us the greatest animation in Dragon Ball history for the last 20 minutes, and then just expect CG to not stick out like a sore thumb. I really didn't like the use of CG in this movie. The hard-hitting nature of the fight was lessened during those scenes, and nothing spectacular came out of it. It's not like it ruined the movie or anything, but I just have to ask, why bother? Why is there any CG at all? It's not needed. Thankfully, Broly blows up all the ice and the CG with it. The backdrop to the fight is now lava. This is the point where Frieza feels Broly may have met his match in Super Saiyan Blue Goku and needs to do something drastic. He nonchalantly kills Paragus in one shot and yells for Broly's attention. Broly, seeing the lifeless body of his father, loses it and for the first time transforms into a Super Saiyan. Now, on paper that sounds like some pretty dark stuff, but somehow, some way, this scene got the loudest laughs from the theater every time I watched it. I think Krillin getting owned is such a meme at this point that people see Frieza blowing him up and their first instinct is to laugh. Which is kind of sad because that's basically the most tragic scene in Dragon Ball and sets up for one of the greatest moments in the franchise's history, but whatever. People saw Krillin go boom and they laughed. They saw Frieza call Broly to see his dead father and they laughed. And then they laughed when Broly lost it and went Super Saiyan. I have to wonder if this was intended to be comedic. I lean towards yes, but if so, it's pretty dark for Dragon Ball. Well done. Super Saiyan Broly is born and you know shit just got real. And then shit gets even realer because soon after, Goku loses his shirt. Shirtless Super Saiyan Blue Goku. Now that's a Dragon Ball FighterZ costume I'd buy day one. Broly's Super Saiyan transformation also features some of my favorite music in the entire movie. So I guess now is as good a time as any to give my thoughts on the movie soundtrack. There is only one Shunsuke Kikuchi. He is the master, he is the sound of Dragon Ball, and DBS Broly's music just can't compare. However, Sumitomo's score in Dragon Ball Super, while I considered it downright weak at first, kinda grew on me. The Future Trunks saga had some really solid tracks, and it got even better with the Tournament of Power. Here in Dragon Ball Super Broly, we have by far Sumitomo's best effort since he started working on Dragon Ball. There is some awesome stuff in here. While they don't quite steal the scene like Kikuchi's scores did Once Upon a Time, I can't lie to you, Sumitomo's Broly theme has been stuck in my head for days. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what piece of music I'm talking about. Broly's motif first appears when Broly first appears in his little baby water pod thing, and it's a constant throughout the entire film. We hear a slower rendition of the theme as Broly reminisces about his time as a child training with Ba. Fast forward to later in the film as the fight begins against Vegeta, and we hear this energy-filled arrangement of the theme that complements the action on the screen perfectly. Finally, the song reaches its logical conclusion following the death of Paragus and Broly's explosion of rage as he becomes a Super Saiyan for the first time. The theme now takes on an epic orchestral sound, and it's perfect for this moment of the film. The point is, this song is memorable. It stands out, it enhances what's happening on the screen, and it's awesome. That's all I've ever asked for when it comes to my Dragon Ball music. My biggest complaint about Sumitomo's score in Super was that his songs just blended into the background a lot of the time. I hate that. I love when music drives what we're seeing on the screen, whether it's a cartoon, a video game, or a movie. And in this movie, Sumitomo went all out, and that makes me very happy. I now have some very high hopes for Super soundtrack when it inevitably returns. Returning back to the movie now, unfortunately at this point Vegeta goes blue and joins Goku for another CG fight scene. God, it looks bad. It looks really bad. Luckily, this scene that looks like it's straight out of a video game doesn't last long. Broly then gets distracted by Frieza somehow and proceeds to beat the living shit out of him, and that is just fantastic. Goku and Vegeta know they are beat, so they instant transition over to Piccolo somewhere on the other side of the world. The next sequence is pure comedy and almost acts like a breather from all the fighting we just saw, yet it's also preparing the viewer for the absolute insanity that is to come. Goku wants to do the fusion dance, Vegeta is embarrassed, cut to Broly murdering Frieza, they fail and form Fat Veku. Broly is still murdering Frieza. They fail the fusion again. So at this point, we are to believe Frieza has been straight up getting punched like a damn punching bag by Super Saiyan Broly for an hour. Again, this scene was really comedic, so I doubt they even thought too hard about it, but yeah, Frieza must be an absolute tank to take that beating for an hour. Finally, Goku and Vegeta correctly perform the dance, and the mightiest fusion takes place. Gogeta is born, and for the first time, he's seen in his base form. Cha-ching! Gogeta returns to the battlefield to confront Broly, who is trying to take down Whis for some reason, and Whis is like, bruh, you're strong, but you're not that strong. I like how they dangle that carrot for the viewer, like as strong as these monsters are in the movie, there's always someone stronger out there who's looking down at these little ants and laughing at their pathetic battle powers. And now we finally get to Sheeta's section of the film with the final battle between Gogeta and Broly, and yeah, there's no describing Sheeta's style in words. You know it when you see it, but every time you do, it's just unbelievable. There's stuff everywhere, crazy close-ups, crazy ki blasts, the amount of motion and the pace is just insane. But it's totally appropriate that he's upping the ante here, considering freaking Gogeta has now entered the fray. Between movie 12 and even his appearance in GT, DBS Broly had a lot to live up to when it came to the presentation of the Gogeta character, and they do not disappoint. For everyone who complained that Gogeta only popped up in movie 12 for 2 minutes, this scene more than makes up for it. We get a good 10 minutes of Gogeta on Broly action. The opening sequence of Budokai 3 has finally been paid off, and it's great. Gogeta turns into a Super Saiyan and the fight picks up even more. It's amazing that we are now 30 minutes into this fight, and it's followed the same formula the entire time of the fighters just powering up and transforming, yet it hasn't gotten stale because the execution of everything is just so on point. Gogeta fires a gigantic barrage of ki blasts at Broly, no doubt one of his supers when he is inevitably revealed as DLC for Dragon Ball FighterZ. Eventually, the two shoot ki blasts so powerful that they collide, and what happens next has been described as universe bending, and I think that's an apt description. Glass shatters and Gogeta and Broly are now fighting in what looks like Final Destination from a Smash Bros. Game. And what follows should have been the coolest part of the entire fight. Instead, this is probably the most disappointing part of the entire movie for me. I've been talking all this time about execution and how well the execution has been for the entire fight so far. Right here, the execution is so terrible that I couldn't even believe my eyes. We jump into a CGI fight, which already you know how I feel about that. It sucks and it looks bad. But far, far worse is the fact that Broly transforms into his iconic buff legendary Super Saiyan form, and Gogeta transforms into Super Saiyan Blue for the very first time, and it happens so fast, you probably would have missed it if you weren't looking for it. I'm completely baffled by this. This is the climax of the fight. The two strongest fighters have reached their final forms. Up to now, every transformation scene has been bad-ass. They really made every transformation feel important and momentous. And then we get to the most powerful transformations of all, and they just kinda quickly transform in the blink of an eye with no build-up. It's baffling. I legitimately can't believe it, and I don't know what the explanation is behind this decision, but I would love to hear it. Luckily, the CG Fest doesn't last too long, and we're back to gorgeous traditional 2D animation soon enough. And as expected, Legendary Super Saiyan Broly and Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta both look spectacular when they don't look like Xbox 360 characters. This portion of the fight is even faster than the first, if that's even possible. Broly looks like an absolute freak here. Some of the poses are so weird, and his head is just flying all over the place. As weird as that sounds, it just works. But then came the moment that I think got the loudest reaction from my theater all 3 times I watched the movie. And it was Gogeta using the Stardust Breaker straight out of movie 12. I think people like movie 12, just a little bit. This is absolutely pure fan service, but I love it so much, and I'm happy they didn't just forget about what has become basically his patented technique over the years. What follows immediately after that movie 12 homage is a movie 8 homage, with Broly powering up in his legendary Super Saiyan form. This is what I would have liked to see before instead of that CG disaster that they ended up going with. I could understand that maybe they didn't just want to lift the exact same transformation scene from movie 8 and apply it here, but man, this looked absolutely incredible and was so hype. By the way, we're like 40 minutes in now, and the adrenaline is still pumping. This fight is just bonkers. Broly rushes in, but an unfazed Gogeta maintains control. He just beats the hell out of Broly and unveils what is undoubtedly Gogeta's level 3 super in Dragon Ball FighterZ. This move looked awesome. Just as Gogeta is about to deliver the killing blow with a Kamehameha, Chilai uses the Dragon Balls to teleport Broly away to Planet Vampa. And this ends what I believe to be the best looking fight in the history of Dragon Ball. Every time I watched this fight, my heart was pumping after it ended. I could say with confidence that this fight is unlike anything I've ever seen in a movie before. The movie ends with Goku traveling to Vampa himself to meet with Broly, Chilai, and Lemmo. They're friendly to one another, and the implication here clearly is that we have not seen the last of Broly. And that's it, everyone. Dragon Ball Super Broly. Time for some overall thoughts on the film. So, in case it wasn't clear during my rundown, I freaking loved this film. I loved it so much. I said it so many times during my Dragon Ball Super episode reviews that if something looks really good, or looks really badass, or the execution is really good, it pretty much gets a pass from me no matter what. And that was this movie in a nutshell. It looked so damn good, I can't say it enough times. This movie literally makes the last two Dragon Ball movies look like low-budget TV specials in comparison. Like, there's no going back from this. They have raised the bar with this one, to say the least. However, as great as the animation was, DBS Broly is not perfect. I can't stress enough how badly they need to stop doing CG fight scenes. Seriously, stop it. Never again. Never. I also thought the plot of the film itself could have used a bit of work. When you really look at it, it is pretty basic. Broly was sent away as a baby, but now he's finally been found. Now he's on Earth to fight Goku and Vegeta, and that's the plot. Really not much to it. Really not much emotional investment in Broly or Goku or Vegeta during the fight itself. And that fight, as beautiful as it was 45 minutes long. That's a pretty big chunk of the movie not having any real emotional stakes. It kind of felt like an exhibition fight between the three Saiyans, where really the only characters that are truly invested are Paragus and Frieza. In movie 8, Broly was a galaxy-destroying crazy person who was going to murder the whole universe if Goku and friends didn't stop him. This Broly is hella chill. I'll give it a pass because it is a movie and there's only so much time to set all this stuff up, and by Dragon Ball movie standards, it's not that bad at all. But by Dragon Ball storytelling standards overall, it's definitely lacking some of that emotion that we've seen time and time again over the course of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. If we now have the very best look Dragon Ball has ever had, I want the very best storytelling to go along with it. I have other things I can nitpick, like the theme song of the movie kinda sucks. It sounds like some generic K-pop crap that doesn't fit the tone of the movie at all. This movie could have used some kachidaze or an all-new hot-blooded insert song with a similar flow. Maybe one day Hironobu Kageyama will bless our ears once again. This movie was missing some Psycho no Fusion, son. And like I said, I enjoyed Sumitomo's music here, but there's definitely room for improvement going forward. But yeah, I don't want to nitpick, because honestly the things I liked about the film far outweigh what I disliked, and if there was one thing I took away from this movie, it's that the future is bright for the Dragon Ball franchise. So, exactly where do we go in the future? Well, we have many potential new directions coming out of DBS Broly. The most obvious revolving around Broly himself. With the way this movie ends, I strongly believe that Broly will be a primary character going forward, likely the third main protagonist beside Goku and Vegeta. Don't be surprised if the new Dragon Ball anime is announced and Broly is all over the marketing materials. Another interesting factor in all of this is Toyotaro's current arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga. There are a lot of questions on whether this story is canon or not, but the events of DBS Broly are mentioned, and it does take place after this movie chronologically. Will it be adapted into anime form or stay manga only? Or maybe they'll start the new anime with a DBS Broly adaptation, similar to how Super started with the Battle of Gods and Resurrection F adaptations. The movie itself hints at a couple of potential directions as well. At the beginning of the current day segment, Goku gets excited about how powerful the other universes were during the Tournament of Power, and that fires him up and inspires him to get stronger. I think it goes without saying that we'll be exploring other universes in a future Dragon Ball story. That's not really a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I mean, someone has to take out El Hermano, right? The next big hint to me came from King Vegeta, who identified Broly as a quote-unquote mutant, which explains his extreme power. Some are already speculating that Kale is a mutant Saiyan as well, just from Universe 6. Could we see other mutants popping up with absurdly high power levels on par with Goku and friends? It wouldn't shock me. Finally, we have to talk about Super Saiyan 4. I don't know about you, but that cutaway to Paragus explaining that Broly has found a way to harness the power of the Ozaru in his human body made me think of one thing, and that's Super Saiyan 4. The fact that Broly has golden eyes in that form, just like a Super Saiyan 4, practically sealed the deal for me. They do not place a line like that into the script for no reason. It's there specifically to incite speculation about Super Saiyan 4, just like I'm doing right now. And given the fact that this modern era of Dragon Ball has seen Gogeta and Broly join the official Dragon Ball canon, it's clear that Shueisha and the Dragon Ball Room are determined to cherry-pick the most beloved aspects of the quote-unquote non-canon Dragon Ball material and place them directly into the canon. Once Broly can harness that Ozaru in human form properly, Super Saiyan 4 will become a regular part of Dragon Ball Super. I can almost guarantee it. Too many toys to sell. From there, the mind runs wild with potential ideas. As long as they're on this kick of making non-canon characters canon, could we see Janemba make a comeback? Frieza is looking for powerful allies, and who's better than Cooler? And of course, I think we would all like to see Sheeta's take on Android 13's iconic Dick Punch. The possibilities really are endless. To wrap things up, I never thought a Dragon Ball movie would be able to top movie 9 or 12 for me. They were always my favorite movies and basically molded my identity as a Dragon Ball fan at a very young age. They featured Yamamuro in his prime, delivering the best looking Dragon Ball ever. They feature some of my favorite designs in Dragon Ball. Iconic new characters were introduced, there was amazing action, some of the most satisfying and badass moments in the entire franchise, and of course, Shunsuke Kikuchi's legendary soundtrack guides us through the entire journey. Even if DBS Broly doesn't check every one of those boxes, I am happy to say that it stands right alongside the best movies in Dragon Ball history. With the updated art style and use of Broly and Gogeta, it in many ways feels like a love letter to those movies that came before it, and that makes me really happy. I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. Oh my god, this went really long, but I was so damn hyped for this film, and it totally delivered, so I cannot help but be excited here, and I hope this review got you excited too. If you like this video and want to see more awesome Dragon Ball content, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. 2019 looks like it's going to be another huge year for Dragon Ball. With the return of Super imminent and Season 2 DLC for Dragon Ball FighterZ coming very soon, there's going to be no shortage of news to talk about. So, until then, thanks so much for watching everyone, and take care.